Welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for July 21, 2024. Today we're talking with Benyamin Poghosyan. Welcome to the show, Benyamin. Great to have you on board.
Ողջույն Benyamin.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. Thank you for having me. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you.
The pleasure is all ours and our listeners.
Our pleasure indeed. So, Benyamin, 2024 is a pivotal year of elections worldwide and in our region as well. And this might have a drastic effect on the future of Armenia. So we'd like to spend a little bit of time discussing these developments. One of the most globally important political races this year is the presidential race in the US. The prospect of a Trump presidency has always been a possibility. And after the assassination attempt on him on July 13, his ratings appear to be on the rise. Also last week, he became the official Republican nominee during the Republican National Convention, and Joe Biden ended his campaign to seek re-election and passed the torch to his VP Kamala Harris. So how will a potential Trump presidency affect US policy in the region and Armenia specifically?
Frankly speaking, tough task, because when I'm speaking with American experts sitting in the top Washington think tanks, and like the basic question, okay, what the main pillars or trends of Trump foreign policy is going to be if Mr. Trump comes back to Washington in January 2025, the common answer is no one knows. And then there are a lot of speculations, but again, common answer is no one knows. But if I will try to make some assessments, so my understanding is that probably, again, everything is based on probability. Probably Mr. Trump will stop using South Caucasus as some sort of irritation to anger Russia or to irritate Russia. Because what we see now, how United States is behaving in the South Caucasus, I have a feeling that they just want to make Russia a little bit more pain. Of course, South Caucasus, you cannot harm Russia too much by doing anything in South Caucasus. But still, I have the feeling that Americans, what they are doing in South Caucasus, they are viewing it in their prism, okay, how we can make Russia a little bit more irritated. And even high-level State Department official, Mr. O'Brien, during his interview to Radio Liberty Armenian Service in June 2024, he clearly stated that we are interested, I mean the United States, are interested in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia-Turkey normalization and peace process because we believe that this will decrease Russian influence in South Caucasus and even in Central Asia. He said that we need the road or route which will connect Turkey with Azerbaijan and Central Asia via Armenia because we want more Turkey in Central Asia and we want to give Central Asia alternative to reach Europe, circumventing both Russia and China. So the current administration viewing at least everything happening in South Caucasus through the prism of let's make harm to Russia. My understanding is that probably Trump will not do that. So at least South Caucasus probably will stop to be for the United States some small soldier or some small pawn through which you would like to make Russians a little bit angry. In theory, of course, this may somehow decrease the level of this great power competition or rivalry in the South Caucasus, which I believe potentially will be beneficial for everyone. Of course, we all know that there are many experts in Armenia and outside Armenia who say that if US will lose its interest in South Caucasus, even losing its interest to use South Caucasus as something to irritate Russia, then any decrease of US interest may result in immediate Azerbaijani attack or aggression to occupy Syunik or part of Syunik and open the Zangezur corridor by force. Frankly speaking, I'm not buying these arguments too much because I don't believe that number one deterring force against Azerbaijani potential aggression against Armenia is current US involvement in South Caucasus or any US position. Like Azerbaijan is not attacking Armenia and Azerbaijan is not opening Zangezur corridor by force, primarily because he fears United States or United States has or has not any such policy. I don't believe this is a fact. So in any case, my understanding is that from this point of view, that South Caucasus will be less battlefield for great power competition. This is good for South Caucasus. But there is another issue. We all know that Iran is one of the deterring factors against Azerbaijani aggression against Armenia. And we all know that Trump launched this maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Trump drew United States from nuclear deal in 2018. So but again, everything is based on if Trump again comes back to his policy of putting maximum pressure on Iran, even not taking account the fact that the new Iranian president is ready to at least start the process of normalization of relations with United States, then if due to this Trump potential anti-Iranian policy, Iran will have problems, it will decrease Iran's capacities and capabilities to act in South Caucasus, which itself is a bad news for Armenia. So again, the problem is that, frankly speaking, my understanding, nobody can argue by 100% what Trump is going to do or is not going to do. So many things which we can discuss is a little bit, I don't want to say manipulative, but let's say it's a little bit speculative.
Benjamin, in light of what you just said, is there any relationship between this and why Armenia's ambassador in DC, Maguns, attended the Republican National Convention? Was it appropriate, wise, or are they hedging their bets that there will be a Trump presidency and they would like to have some, affiliation with it?
I think this was a smart move because at the end of the day, the Republican Party is one only of two leading parties of the United States. And I don't believe that any country should say, okay, I love Democrats and I hate Republicans. And I don't believe that we should say that, okay, Democrats are pro-Armenian or Republicans are anti-Armenian. At the end of the day, Armenia should work with any United States president who is going to be elected by the United States people. And again, the Republican Party is not marginalized group of people to say, okay, we don't care. There are some, 1,000 crazy people somewhere in Texas. No, this is a well-established party. They was in power, like if you go into the 20th century, it was mostly like 50-50 in early 21st century, 50-50, Republicans and Democrats. And of course, to say that Armenia should work only with Democratic Party, it sounds, put it mildly weird. So yes, of course, Armenia should work also with Republican Party as a government, especially now, as you mentioned, that after assassination attempt, Biden withdrawal, and everything else, probably now Trump's chances to become next president of the United States is a little bit higher. For example, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Benjamin, Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, is commonly seen as the essentially next generation in grooming. He's pretty young and he has some level of prominence. And as a senator, he has also, he has expressed himself on Armenian issues. For instance, he has called out Azerbaijan's, quote, rapid overthrow, unquote, of Nagorno-Karabakh ceasefire. He has also opposed the sale of arms to a firm that violated the Azerbaijan arms embargo. And I also want to add that I agree that Armenians traditionally, it's good that we are trying to establish contacts with the Republicans because traditionally I think we have had more success in working with Democrats. What is your opinion in general about J.D. Vance specifically as a vice presidential candidate?
One thing is clear that regardless if Trump wins or not, I think J.D. Vance probably will become the leader of this MAGA movement or this new wave of Trumpism or MAGA movement. And my understanding is that even if Trump loses, J.D. Vance has all chances, for example, to launch its own presidential campaign in 2028. Of course, he may compete with Marco Rubio and some other Republicans, but being Trump's pick for vice president probably will boost him. So let's see. And if he's becoming vice president, if Trump wins, and Trump itself is 78 years old, so probably in 2028, when Trump will be 82 years old, it will be almost the same history as with President Biden. People will say, okay, probably you are too old to be elected and govern until you are 86 years old.
Well, he cannot because this will be his second term in office.
Yes, even legally he's not able. So it means that, yes, J.D. Vance will probably, if not dominate the Republican Party for decades, but will be one of the leading figures for Republican Party really for decades, because I believe he's now 39 years old. So theoretically, he can be in active politics at least for 25 or even 30 years. So my understanding is that it will be nice to look into this guy, at least, for example, to read his book, because his memoirs, which were published, I think, in 2015 or 2016, somehow opens the way for him becoming more or less known for wider circles of American people, and his understanding, for example, that he, blue-collar parents, and how they suffered, and also probably how globalization impacted this real Middle America. So my advice would be that, okay, those who are dealing with United States, to follow Mr. Vance and probably starting to read his memoirs, which again was published, I think, some 8 years ago.
Understood. Let's switch to Georgia, the next election, essentially, that we wish to keep a tab on. We know that Georgia is holding a parliamentary elections in, I believe, October of this year. And we know that there's a big rift between the current Georgian Dream ruling party and essentially the collective West, to the point where Georgia's EU candidacy has been paused and a number of sanctions have been imposed against the ruling party leadership, especially after the law on transparency of foreign influence, or what you may know as the foreign agent law, or if you are of the Western persuasion, you may know it as the Russian law, and other anti-liberal agendas that have essentially alienated the West. So therefore, the upcoming parliamentary elections are seen as pivotal and would probably determine the future of Georgia. At least that's my guess. And it will be a choice between whether the country will reject the conservative policies of Georgian Dream and punish the party, or whether the voters will approve of GD policies and therefore put Georgia's EU relations and the relations with the West on ice for the foreseeable future. Some analysts essentially therefore conclude that this is also pivotal for Armenia, because whichever way Georgia goes, Armenia would be affected severely. So are we right that the Georgian elections are important for Armenia, Benjamin?
Definitely, yes. The elections are scheduled for October 26, 2024. And you are right that there is a high polarization in Georgia. Both government and opposition are preparing most probably for post-election developments. Many experts even speak about the possibility of the next revolution, or at least attempt by the opposition to launch next revolution. Of course, the key message which Georgian Dream uses is that we will not allow Georgia to become second Ukraine. We will not allow Georgia to become second front against Russia, and we will not allow the global party of the war. And this is official terminology by Georgian Prime Minister and by de facto Georgian ruler Bidzina Ivanishvili, global party of the war. They are telling that the global party of the war would like to use Georgia against Russia as they are using Ukraine, like simply destroying Georgia as they are destroying Ukraine, only to harm Russia. And they are telling we will not allow to destroy Georgia only because global party of the war would like to harm Russia. And even Georgian Prime Minister used the term of liberal fascism. He said that in last 20 years, liberal fascism has done huge harm to Georgia. And in 2024 elections is probably the threshold to say to the liberal fascism that its days in Georgia is over. And we understand that using term liberal fascism, it's like very tough language, which absolutely is not accepted and absolutely is not welcomed by the European Union and the United States. So let's see. But again, many experts believe that definitely, regardless what will be the real results, unless we live in post-truth world, like no one will care what are the real results. Most probably, the scenario will be this, that officially Georgian Dream will win the election and will receive at least 90 MPs from 150. And in Georgia, again, like in Armenia, it's 100% proportional. So people are voting for parties. But Georgian legislation is not allowing to have official blocs or alliances between different parties. So if you want different parties to make alliance, they should be in the one list. And this cannot be named by alliance. But in any case, so most likely scenario, Georgian Dream, like officially, wins the elections and have the possibility to have a one-party government. As I mentioned, the number of MPs is 150. which means that 76 MPs is enough to have majority, but Georgian Dream believes that it has chances to have even 90 MPs. So on late evening, October 26 or early morning, October 27, we will hear that according to Central Elections Commission, like Georgian Dream won the election and it will have, I don't know, like 85 MPs from 150. Then main opposition party, UNM, which is the party of Mr. Saakashvili. So now UNM is split between two lists, but I don't want to go too much into details. But in any case, UNM probably the both two branches of the UNM, which are going to take part in the elections through two different lists. They will say that elections were rigged, and they will call their supporters together in downtown Tbilisi and then move to the government building, parliament building. So the same story as we saw many times in Europe, starting from Serbia in 2000, then Georgia in November 2003 Rose Revolution, then in Ukraine Orange Revolution, several times in Kyrgyzstan, then Euromaidan, etc., etc., etc. And then, and because everyone outside Georgia, no one really cares, like Georgian Dream won or Georgian Dream rigged the election, everyone will wait and see the result of these rallies or, God forbid, clashes or whatever. If opposition will be able to force government out, then people will say, of course, Georgian Dream rigged elections. If Georgian Dream will remain in power, some people will say they rigged elections, but we have to interact with them because they are at least de facto authorities. Regarding the relation with the West, the key issue is here. If opposition organizes demonstrations, try to, I don't know, storm the government buildings, etc., like traditional revolution. And if police uses force, and at the end of the day, Georgian Dream keeps power, number one question, will West recognize the elections, or will West use the same tactic as it used after Belarus presidential elections in August 2020? Because the West didn't recognize the election results and said that for us, Mr. Lukashenko is not a legitimate president. So let's see. Some in the West argue that yes, if Georgian Dream is going to rig elections, but again, it's very different to understand the elections were rigged or not. You will believe what you want, because again, we live in post-truth world. So for millions of people, elections will be rigged. For millions of people, elections will not be rigged, and nobody cares what happens in reality. So this is a political decision. Will the West say that yes, elections are rigged? So for us, Mr. Kobakidze, if he's going to remain prime minister, is not a legal prime minister. We don't recognize election results. Some in the West are telling that yes, we should do that if elections are rigged. But some in the West are telling that by doing this, we will force Georgian Dream to come very closer to Russia, like we will contribute Belarusization of Georgia, and this is against Western interest, because at the end of the day, history is not going to end by one election. Yes, Georgian Dream may win in 2024, but there will be another election in 2028. Like, why completely alienate Georgia and pushing Georgia too close to Russia, which itself will decrease any chances that even in 2028 elections, some pro-Western people can come to power. So this is a very complicated debate also in the West, what to do with Georgia regarding impact on Armenia. Of course, even if for the next 4 years, Georgia-West relations will be complicated, even if West recognize its elections, but still relations will be complicated. If West will not recognize elections, it will be like huge crisis. But in both scenarios, if Georgia also like somehow frees its Euro-Atlantic aspirations, it will be clear that in South Caucasus, there could be no Euro-Atlantic future because, okay, Russia is against Euro-Atlantic future of South Caucasus, Iran is against, Turkey not against, but also not happy, like trying to balance. Azerbaijan has nothing to do with Euro-Atlantic integration. Azerbaijan position is very clear. Okay, I will sell my oil to European Union, I will get European Union euros, and then I will do whatever I want. Only business, forget about anything else. So if Russia is against European integration, Iran is against, Turkey is balanced, Azerbaijan has no intention. If Georgia is also freezing its European integration, then all this hype which we hear or see in Armenia that yes, Armenia is becoming closer to the European Union. Finally, we start the negotiations about visa liberalization. Like after 8 years of negotiating, finally we start negotiations. And then this European Peace Facility, 10 million euros for some tents and some other support. So we see there is some hype in Armenia that, okay, Armenia may become next Georgia. Like West put billions or tens of billions of dollars on Georgia to create some sort of anti-Russian foothold in South Caucasus. Now Georgia betrayed the West. West is upset. Of course, they don't want to use their tens of billions of dollars. But if they are not able to somehow change the government in Georgia, then they have to come to Armenia and maybe transform Armenia into another Georgia, like anti-Russia foothold, and then Armenia will receive tens of billions of dollars. All this maybe sound nice or not very nice in theory. But again, if Georgian Euro-Atlantic aspirations are going to be frozen after October 2024 parliamentary elections, then I think any talk about Armenia will pursue Euro-Atlantic integration and will be successful in Euro-Atlantic integration, defying both Russia, Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, I think it will be even more than science fiction. Right. So then I think even the most like hardline pro-Westerners somehow will understand it, okay, at least let's wait until 2028.
We frequently talk about accusations from the West that Georgia is serving Russian interests. I want to gauge how involved is Russia. We can definitely see the evidence of EU and Western soft power in Georgia, and now even forceful attempts to change Georgian policy. Are we seeing the same level of involvement from Russia and other players? We know that, for instance, Iran, you said, is against Georgia's involvement. Does Iran have any leverage against Georgia in terms of this external orientation? Essentially, who are the main external players that are not only have an interest in Georgia's elections, but also are flexing their muscle? And the name I didn't mention is Azerbaijan. And we know that Azerbaijan has a huge lobby in Georgia. So we want to know whether this issue of Georgia's, whether it's the Georgian Dream or A&M that comes to power, whether that's something that Azerbaijan cares about, or, do they care about only issues that affect them?
Very interesting question. Starting with Iran, I don't believe Iran has any real leverage to influence Georgia because there is no land border. So yes, of course, Iran will be able to see less West in Georgia, but I don't believe they are in a position to influence the situation. Turkey, Azerbaijan, very interesting question. So are Turkey and Azerbaijan interested to see pro-Western Georgia, or they would like to see like more balanced Georgia coming back to the format of 3+3? By the way, there are a lot of discussions that if Georgian Dream won elections, probably Georgia will also be part of this 3+3, making the full platform, because as of now,
and we have a separate question about 3+3 also.
Yeah. So it's a very complicated and challenging question, but my understanding is that from at least Azerbaijani perspective, a more balanced foreign policy from Georgian side probably is good for Azerbaijan also. And here is a very interesting question, because if there is a less West in Georgia, but automatically it will not mean more Russia, because A, Russia is still fully focused on its war with the West, and B, as far as there is an issue of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, Georgian society cannot fully embrace Russia. So even from this perspective, if there is a less West in Georgia, then Turkey and Azerbaijan may think that they can even increase more their presence. And here it's interesting, because some in Georgia believe that this Georgian push toward China, like 1 year ago, Georgia signed strategic partnership with China, and then just a month ago, Chinese consortium won the tender to construct this new huge deep sea port on Black Sea. Some people believe that also Georgian government understands that if it's becoming less pro-West, then Turkey and Azerbaijan may increase their influence. But because they already have too much influence in Georgia, some believe that moving towards China is somehow Georgia's hopes that, okay, through China we can balance also Turkish and Azerbaijani influence. So Turkey and Azerbaijan definitely are players, and at the end of the day, I believe they will be happy to see Georgia less pro-Western. Of course, Russia will be happy, but how much Russia is involved? Again, Russia is mostly focused on Ukraine or on its war with the West. Of course, if you are a great power, it does not mean that you forget about everything. Like United States is focused on Asia Pacific, but US involved in Africa, in Latin America, and Southeast Asia. So definitely, Russia is interested, and you see that Georgia, there are hundreds of thousands of Georgians living in Russia. Russia and Georgia has common border, so Russia has some sort of leverage to influence. But it's really challenging to say like how much Russia is influencing, for example, the decision making in Georgia. Because let's be clear, at least under Saakashvili, it was very clear that, for example, the United States has significant influence on strategic decision making of Georgia. Now, I'm not in a position to say that, for example, Russia has any influence on strategic decision making in Georgia. But of course, any tensions between Georgia and the West is good for Russia, definitely.
We talked a little bit about the influence of Azerbaijan in Georgia, but Azerbaijan itself is having parliamentary elections, I believe on September 1, 2024. What is the reason for these elections, Benyamin?
A good question. Officially, like elections are going to take place, I believe, in November or December 2024, but because Azerbaijan is focused on COP29, which is going to take place between November 11 and 22, the official explanation is that, okay, let's not create more complications for the COP29. By the way, this could be realistic because at the end of the day, in the countries like Azerbaijan, which is full authoritarian and there is like one family ruling, parliament never decides anything. So I don't see any like reasons for any domestic political reasons or even foreign political reasons which may force or trigger President Aliyev to say, okay, let's bring elections few months earlier. So from my perspective, this time, this Azerbaijani official explanation that we need elections on September 1st, not to be mingled with COP29, sounds more or less reasonable.
In fact, when you mentioned COP29, that reminded me that there are a lot of these rumors that Azerbaijan is going to attack Armenia after COP29. But today, Azerbaijan actually invited Armenia to attend COP29. What are your thoughts? As you mentioned, it could be a logistics issue. They didn't want two major events happening in Baku at the same time. But what are your thoughts about COP29 in relation with all this?
Well, and my question would be, there's this popular meme, ¿Por qué no los dos? Why not both? So invite Armenia and attack Armenia at the same time.
My understanding is that any attack against Armenia before COP29 or during COP29, of course, is less likely. What Azerbaijan is doing, and if you jump into like this Armenia-Azerbaijan negotiation stuff, like, look, there was a momentum that something should be signed before COP29, and we see how much at least the United States was actively pushing this idea. Sign something before COP29. Let's transform COP29, not only the climate summit, but also the summit, climate and peace summit. And this is, by the way, this Azerbaijani logic. COP29, climate and peace summit. And this is not the first momentum to sign something between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Momentum was in 2022, immediately after Azerbaijani attack against Jermuk and the Prague's EPC summit, October 2022, when Armenia recognized Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. Then momentum was immediately after military takeover of Nagorno-Karabakh by Azerbaijan in September 2023. But these both momentum were killed by Azerbaijan. Interestingly, Azerbaijan now killing the third momentum because Azerbaijan clearly and deliberately repeats about two preconditions. Like, no agreement can be signed with Armenia without Armenia changes constitution and deleting any reference to the Declaration of Independence of 1990, which itself has a reference to the decision of Soviet Armenia Supreme Council and Nagorno-Karabakh National Council of unification of Nagorno-Karabakh with Soviet Armenia. This is precondition number one. And precondition number two, that Armenia should agree and jointly apply with Azerbaijan to the OSCE to officially cancel or end the activities of end the activities of OSCE Minsk Group. And President Aliyev is smart enough to understand that constitutional changes or new constitution is not going to happen by the end of 2024. Like now, even Pashinyan officially adopted a decision that there's a special commission on constitutional amendments, which was established back in January 2022 to draft the concept for constitutional amendments. And this concept was delivered to the government in December 2023. But then starting from January 2024, Pashinyan started to speak that we need a new constitution. And in May 2024, he adopted a decision that the same commission or committee should elaborate the concept for the new constitution. But this concept should present it to the government in mid-2026. And the text or the draft of the new constitution should be presented to the government by December 30, 2026. So ALiyev knows very well that Armenia is not going to have a new constitution, at least by the end of 2026. So when he says that, okay, no peace agreement unless Armenia changes its constitution, it means no peace agreement until the end of 2026, which, by the way, interestingly means that Azerbaijan undermines US efforts, because US is doing everything to have something signed not by the end of 2026, but by COP29, which means November 2024.
Benjamin, ALiyev has been sending signals that, yes, most likely we will not sign a peace agreement, but some kind of a framework or an agreement on the principles can be signed. Would that satisfy the US? Because as far as I know, that's where ALiyev is leading things. And frequently in Azerbaijani press, they talk about this Belfast model where Armenia could agree to change its constitution, but that would be like, a precondition for the final peace agreement whenever it's signed. But right now, at least that could be included in the principles. And Pashinyan would go along with that.
You are right that Azerbaijan speaks about framework agreement, and very recently, I think just 2 days ago during this global media forum, Hikmet Hajiyev stated that let's not use the term agreement or framework agreement. He said that Armenia and Azerbaijan can agree on principles of the future peace agreement. Probably it will be some sort of statement about the principles of future agreement, which Azerbaijan offers Armenia to sign by COP29. And interestingly, they officially invited foreign minister, not prime minister, to take part in COP29, which means that nobody now believes that any agreement can be signed, because the only way Pashinyan was going to Baku, from any logical point of view, was either to sign there some agreement, not statement, at least agreement, or agreement is going to be signed before November 2024, and then Pashinyan may go to Baku. So now Azerbaijan speaks about let's agree on principles, and they invite Foreign Minister Arat Mirzoyan. Of course, from Azerbaijani perspective, excellent solution. Still, you can improve Azerbaijani image. Still, you can send the messages to everyone, including the West, that look, we also are benign players. We are negotiating in good faith. Look, we have at least statement, but at least we have a statement on principles, and we are happy. Everyone is happy. But if you look through Armenian perspective, what will give the statement on principles to Armenia? Nothing. Because the principles will have zero details. For example, let's assume there is a principle that Armenia and Azerbaijan will open communications. But this sort of principle was agreed back in November 2020. Article 9 of the trilateral statement, which ends the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War. But there is no details, and we know how this is being differently interpreted by Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Azerbaijan demands the corridor. It means that, I'm giving only one example, that after Armenia, Azerbaijan agrees and sign a statement on principles, after COP29, Azerbaijan will continue to push forward all its demands. Extraterritorial corridor to Nakhchivan, return of so-called Azerbaijanis into their so-called historical lands. I mean the concept of Western Azerbaijan, demands that Armenia should jointly apply to end or close OSCE Minsk group. So, most importantly, the statement on principle will still keep the current status quo of no war, no peace, which means that Azerbaijan will keep the possibility for any kind of military escalation. So, a statement on principles will benefit only Azerbaijan, will give zero benefit to Armenia. So, from Azerbaijani point of view, good step. And probably they believe that if Armenia rejects to sign statement on principles, they can organize an excellent blame game or blame shifting game, telling that, look, Armenia is not constructive. Yes, of course, a statement on principles is not peace agreement, but at least it's better than nothing. And by the way, some Western experts are telling that anything is better than nothing. So, okay, if it's only principle of statement, let's sign it. It's better than nothing. But key question, will this statement on principles be enough for ALiyev to greenlight to President Erdogan, open Armenia-Turkey border and start Armenia-Turkey normalization? Because from the US perspective, I think they really don't care too much about what Armenia and Azerbaijan are going to sign or what is going to happen in 2025 or 2026. Will Azerbaijan withdraw near the territory of Jermuk or will not withdraw? The key for United States is the opening of Armenia-Turkey border and start of Armenia-Turkey normalization process.
So, Benjamin, has the West clearly stipulated to Azerbaijan that what they're after is any kind of an agreement that will definitely lead to Aliyev's greenlighting to Erdogan that he can move forward with Armenia?
My understanding is yes, that from US perspective, again, they don't care much what is going to be signed and what will be titled statement, agreement, principles, goodwill, or fairy tale. But they are interesting to start the Armenia-Turkey normalization process. So if after statement nothing happens on Armenia-Turkey, then from Western perspective, even from Western perspective, this a statement or agreement will worth nothing. So probably yes, West will demand from President Aliyev that sign whatever you want, even we may convince Armenia to sign even these principles, which still will allow you to continue your crazy demands, but you should make this pivotal call to President Erdogan and tell him, my brother, start normalization with Armenia.
At every negotiation opportunity, we see that Aliyev continues to thumb his nose at the West. Since Thursday, the Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministries started blaming each other for the failed meeting between Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan that was supposed to take place on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit at the Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire in UK last week. First, the Azerbaijani side blamed Pashinyan, and then only about an hour later, the Armenian Foreign Ministry made a statement saying that it was actually Azerbaijan who had rejected the meeting. And this breakdown seems to be counter to the previous optimistic picture that we received of the negotiations from the US, who described the sides as being very close to some type of an agreement. That was by the State Department officials the week before during the NATO summit there. So, in short, who was responsible for the failure of the meeting and what was the reason for it?
First of all, I think we should fix that what the United States is telling about Armenia and Azerbaijan being close to peace agreement is simply not the truth, because look, September 2022, immediately after attacks against Yermouk, Armin Grigoryan, Hikmet Hajiyev met with Jake Sullivan in Washington, White House, and then there was an official statement from the United States that sides are very close to sign a peace agreement. September 2022, even before blockade and complete destruction of Nagorno-Karabakh. Then, May, June 2023, Antony Blinken organized two big summits between ministries of foreign affairs of Armenia and Azerbaijan, because they were working groups. It's not only ministers themselves, like 6-7 people from Armenian side, 6-7 people from Azerbaijani side. And after these two meetings, again, May, June 2023, we can read the statements of Secretary Blinken that sides are very, very close to sign a peace agreement, like only 1 centimeter. And this was in a time when Karabakh was under blockade, but again, there was no military takeover of Nagorno-Karabakh. So if you look into the last 2 years of US active involvement in the negotiation process, like starting probably from summer 2022, we see many times Americans were telling that sides are very close, we need only like 1 week or 1 month to sign peace agreement. But then nothing happened, even there were new escalations, blockade, destruction of Nagorno-Karabakh, etc., etc. So I will not believe to US statements on face value. What happened in the UK? Of course, no one of us have been there, so it's very difficult to give definitive answers that, okay, I know that situation was this or that, but my understanding was that Azerbaijan pushed forward the idea of organizing some trilateral meeting with UK, but probably Armenian side saw that, okay, Azerbaijani are bringing more and more mediators or facilitators, like we have Kazakhstan, who facilitated the meeting of Ministers of Foreign Affairs in Almaty on May 10, now United Kingdom, so it dilutes the process, it clears the visibility of negotiations, but also dilutes the process, because, okay, Kazakhstan, United Kingdom, then Kyrgyzstan, then Egypt, so it will become like a crazy situation when Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers may jump from Egypt to Bishkek to Cairo. From Cairo, they can go to Brazil. So it's understandable. This makes no sense. And also, again, potentially, we all know that UK, of course, it's not UK, it's a British Petroleum, but we all understand that BP is too big not to have at least some influence on UK policy. BP invested, according to several estimates, up to $50 billion in Azerbaijan. So, like, why Armenia should agree to not only expand this number of facilitators, which itself dilutes the process, but also this time accept the UK. My understanding is that Armenia said that, okay, guys, in EPC first, first summit, there was a meeting between Aliyev, Azerbaijan, Michel Macron. At the EPC second meeting, Scholz joined them in Chisinau in June 2023. In Granada, Aliyev didn't appear. So probably Armenian side said that, okay, there is some sort of EPC format, which means Armenia, Azerbaijan, EU, and some European leaders. Probably Armenia offered some sort of like, let's continue this EPC traditions. But because Azerbaijan killed the European format by not appearing in third EPC summit in Granada early October, and then also in late October Brussels summit between President Aliyev, Pashinyan, and Michel, that killing the Brussels platform, probably Azerbaijan said no. So my understanding is that Armenia offered like, let's to have something in line with EPC summit traditions. Again, EPC summit, first summit, Prague, October 2022, second summit, Chisinau, June 2023. Azerbaijan said no. They tried to bring UK as a facilitator, and probably Armenia said that, okay, we do not need any facilitators, especially if, despite all these positive statements of Blinken, this time after this recent meeting of Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers in United States, I believe meeting takes place in early July 2024, that, okay, again, sides are very close, but my understanding is, and frankly speaking, everyone's understanding is that nothing is going to be signed by COP29. Nothing as an agreement. So maybe Armenian side decided that, okay, let's not play the Azerbaijani game of creating some sort of visibility of successful negotiations.
Okay, so where does this put the current state of, I guess you summed it up, but basically we are not close to anything this year. Is that what you're saying? And also, whatever happened to demarcation and delimitation? Essentially, it seems like Azerbaijan got everything that it wanted, and now it has put the process on the back burner and is basically stonewalling, any other moves on that front. Is that correct?
Unfortunately for us, Azerbaijan still wants something. From Azerbaijani perspective, they got these 4 non-enclave villages, but let's remember public statement from President Aliyev that Armenia should return to us first 4 non-enclave villages. Armenia did it, but then, according to President Aliyev, we should return to Azerbaijan 4 enclaves, 3 in Tavush region and 1 in Ararat region. Tigran, which is located on the strategic highway connecting Yerevan with Syunik and Iran. So no, Azerbaijan still wants these 4 enclaves. But I think for everyone, it was very much clear that the idea that, okay, delimitation and demarcation will start in Tavush, and then it will continue all over the 1,000 kilometer of border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, including the areas where Azerbaijan controls Soviet Armenian territories. These 200 square kilometer of territories in Gegharkunik, Voyodor, and Syunik regions. Look, President Aliyev publicly stated many times that Azerbaijani soldiers will not withdraw even 1 centimeter from those territories which we took in 2021, 2022. So it was extremely clear for everyone that even if the delimitation and demarcation process will continue based on any maps, it will cover some part of Armenia-Azerbaijan border, maybe a few hundred kilometers, 600, 700 kilometers, but it will not cover all Armenia-Azerbaijan border because, again, starting from Gegharkunik and going up to Syunik, Azerbaijan will not withdraw from those territories which are part of the Soviet Armenia, which means that they are part of any maps, any Soviet map. So from this perspective, it was clear that process may start in Tavush, Armenia will give villages, then process may continue in some areas where there are not too much disputes, but process cannot be finished because, again, Azerbaijan will not withdraw from these territories. So I don't exclude that delimitation and demarcation may continue. I see 2 options. Option number 1, now Azerbaijan will demand enclaves and again says that, okay, Armenian government officially recognized that enclaves are Azerbaijani territory, which means that Armenian government recognized that Azerbaijan has the right to take this enclave. So give these enclaves through negotiations, or I just will use military force, and then nobody will intervene because I will tell the international community that Armenia recognized this as Azerbaijani occupied territories. So Azerbaijan has the right to use force to liberate its occupied territories. This is option number 1. And then Armenia may say, okay, but in that case, you should give us Artsakh, and then I don't know what may happen. Option number 2, Azerbaijan may say, okay, as of now, let's forget about enclaves. As of now, not forever. Let's continue delimitation, demarcation on those areas where there are no disputes, also to send to the west or to the walls the message that protest continues, Azerbaijan is a good actor, or etc. But because the protest itself is very complicated, even for those areas where there are no obvious disputes, the protest may take years, which means that Azerbaijan still will keep this strategic height starting from Gegarkunik up to Sunik for years. This height will give him good opportunity to launch any attack to open this Zangezur corridor by force or take part of Sunik or Vayuzor if there is a necessity. So I see the protest in these two ways, at least on delimitation demarcation.
Now, going back to the summit, both Scholz and Macron were there. And essentially, despite the efforts of the European diplomacy to achieve a PR win and ensure the meeting happens, it fell through, essentially, as we said. Can we say that when it comes to this topic of the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, ALiyev essentially holds all the trump cards against the EU as a potential mediator? Or is there an EU power, like whether it's an individual country, that has the ability to compel ALiyev to come to the negotiating table? Because it seems to me like EU's leverage is basically completely depleted in this format.
First of all, let's fix that President Aliyev killed the Brussels platform or European format, and let's be frank, EU did not resist too much. Yes, Charles Michel said that, okay, still I'm ready, but at the end of the day, if Armenia or Azerbaijan does not want, okay, go and find other platforms, go to Washington or do whatever you want. Also, we have to understand that this Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict per se is not too important for European Union. If for US, it has some importance to irritate Russia, like, okay, let's open Armenia-Turkey border, let's give Armenia more flexibility to move away from Russia. This will be a little more irritant for Russia. I'm not sure that EU thinks only through this way. So from European perspective, as far as I understand, they think that, okay, we did some actions. Some Europeans understand they have been fooled, frankly speaking, that they have been fooled by Azerbaijan because the Europeans convinced Armenia to recognize Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, and probably Azerbaijan promised them, okay, I will allow Armenians to live in Karabakh under Azerbaijani control with Azerbaijani passports, but still to live, but then kicked all Armenians out, committed ethnic cleansing. Europeans feel that they have been fooled by Azerbaijan, but still, at least some European countries have strong economic bonds with Azerbaijan, and this will continue for at least another 5-10 years, as far as gas still important for some European countries. So my understanding is that from European perspective, okay, there are many conflicts in the world. Here we try to do something. We didn't succeed. Also, the Azerbaijan behaved badly, but also Azerbaijan is important for some of EU countries. So not a big deal. I mean, it's not a catastrophe for the EU that Brussels platform is not working or is dead. No one in European Union perceives it as a diplomatic defeat or humiliation for the European Union. They think, okay, yes, this is one of the conflicts. There are hundreds of conflicts which EU is involved in Africa, Asia, or whatever. So we did our best. Yes, we did mistakes. Azerbaijan probably behaved not very good.
Benyamin, it doesn't look like the EU has given up, though, because Toivo Klaar is out now, but they have already assigned a new person. That's Magdalena Grono.
Yes, and here probably this is like a sign of hope in overall grim situation, because Magdalena Grono knows region very well. He was working for the International Crisis Group, covering also our region. So you can Google and you can find her pieces or articles as an expert covering our region, including the Velvet Revolution. So she knows the region very well.
And also, let me just interject that she is currently the chief foreign policy advisor to the president of the European Council, essentially. So she already has a lot of context in the process. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely, yes. She was advisor to Charles Michel for last 2 years as a chief foreign advisor. Starting from May 2024, she became chief diplomatic advisor. But again, she knows the region very well, and she was close to Charles Michel when Charles Michel started its mediation process back in summer 2021. Let's not forget that the process started when in July 2021, Charles Michel visited the region and said that EU is ready to facilitate the process. At that time, even there was no Ukraine war, but still EU said, okay, I'm not competing with Russia, but I'm ready to provide alternative or additional platform. And definitely Magdalena was part of all this Brussels process, meetings Charles Michel, ALiyev, Pashinyan, April, May, August 2022, May, July 2023, and also some meetings between Toivo Klaar, Armenian equivalent Hikmet Hajev. So this is a good sign, which means that at the end of the day, probably you hope that when this, after this cycle of elections, new leadership will come to power fully. I mean, the new president of the European Council, the new vice president of the European Commission on Foreign Policy, which will be Kaja Kallas, the former prime minister of Estonia, and Magdalena Grono. Probably, I don't exclude that EU believes that somewhere in late 2024 or maybe early 2025, EU may try to be more active, maybe to revitalize Brussels platform or at least come to some ideas. But the fact that they appointed a person who knows the region very well and who was directly involved in the EU mediation efforts between Armenia and Azerbaijan is a sign that, yes, again, EU is a little bit disappointed. Again, this is not catastrophic for the EU, but still maybe Europeans believe that they can be somehow revitalize their involvement.
At the NATO summit last week in Washington, D.C., representatives from the U.S. State Department said that both sides, Armenia and Azerbaijan, must be ready to make, quote unquote, tough compromises, and that the U.S. would push the sides to achieve peace. I don't know about the talk of compromises. So far, I've only seen single-sided concessions by Armenia. What are these tough compromises envisioned or expected by the State Department?
Frankly speaking, sometimes when I hear the State Department, I have a feeling that they just mocking Armenia. It sounds a little bit rude, probably, but after 4 years of Armenia losing everything, being defeated, humiliated, Azerbaijan getting everything, to speak that sides need mutual compromises, like to say that, okay, there were some mutual compromises before and now the process should continue, it's frankly speaking, it's a literally mockery. I'm not sure who is writing this text for State Department officials, because many State Department officials definitely has no understanding of what happened in South Caucasus, and probably they should not, but at least those people who are preparing talking points should not put this type of weird statement. Mm-hmm. Okay, 4 years, Armenia is being defeated and humiliated, Azerbaijan getting everything. Now, compromises both for Azerbaijan and Armenia. I'm not sure, frankly speaking, what compromise United States thinks that Azerbaijan should do. If they believe that statement on principles is a huge compromise for Azerbaijan, then I have no comments. From Armenian side, probably this should be related with a road or route which should connect Turkey with Azerbaijan via Armenia and then to Central Asia. Because as I mentioned, Mr. O'Brien, probably the highest level US official who is directly involved for the region, he clearly publicly stated during his interview to Radio Liberty Armenian service that yes, United States needs this route to connect Turkey with Central Asia via Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yes, via Armenia and Azerbaijan, because US wants Central Asia to have alternatives than Russia and China. So potentially, I don't exclude that Americans want this route to be open. I mean, connecting Azerbaijan with Turkey via Armenia. They understand that even if it's okay, I don't believe that Americans simply will tell Armenia give full extraterritorial corridor to Azerbaijan. It will be too much. But potentially, Americans, maybe they are thinking to invent some model which will be face-saving for both Pashinyan and ALiyev. Something, I'm not sure what something is going to be, but sometimes Americans are quite innovative. Something which will allow Pashinyan to say, look, I resisted and rejected Azerbaijan demand for extraterritorial corridor, while simultaneously ALiyev will say, look, there is almost no Armenian control. But the essence for the Americans, there will be a route, additional route connecting Turkey with Azerbaijan, because as O'Brien mentioned, there is a route via Georgia, but the Americans want more routes. Mm-hmm. And the Americans will be happy to see these routes, plus if we all understand that the routes may be opened if there is anything signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan, even statement on principles. So if this also will allow to start Armenia-Turkey normalization after receiving green light by President ALiyev, this will be very good news for the United States. So Armenia-Turkey normalization starts, Armenia has more options to move away from Russia, Turkey has more connection with Azerbaijan and Central Asia, so excellent situation for the United States.
So what leverage does the US have on Azerbaijan to compel them to negotiate in good faith on all this?
Good question. Frankly speaking, given that our Americans are speaking about necessity to sign something for at least 18 months, if not 2 years, and we all understand that the Armenian government is almost ready to sign anything, but still there is nothing to be signed, it gives me the point to say that probably not much leverage. Of course, one leverage is to threaten President Aliyev that I will freeze your tens of billions of your illegal money, which are in European and American stock exchange, in cryptos, in luxury, real estate, etc. But it will mean like making Azerbaijan enemy of the United States. I don't believe that Americans will do that because they need Azerbaijan. But if you taking out these sanctions or threat to President Aliyev or his inner circle personal wealth, my understanding is that not too much leverage. At the end of the day, US cannot threaten President Aliyev that sign something, otherwise 2 B-52 strategic bombers will bomb Baku. Definitely no. So not much leverage, because if leverage was there, again, leverage except personal sanctions, then probably Azerbaijan would sign something. Because again, 2 years, Americans are speaking that yes, this agreement is very important. It will allow Armenia to move away from Russia. It will allow even Central Asia to become more independent from Russia and China. Central Asia, we are speaking about the territory of approximately 65 million people. And President Aliyev says, no, I'm not going to do that. By the way, there are a lot of discussions that there is some sort of deal between Russia and Azerbaijan. And President Putin convinced or threatened, or I don't know do what, to President Aliyev, telling him that, okay, you should undermine this American idea or American version of peace in South Caucasus until the war in Ukraine will be stopped, and then I will come back. This is one of the like semi-conspiracy theories.
The picture you paint, at least that's my takeaway from what you said so far, is that the EU has very little interest and leverage against Azerbaijan in order to push it to compromise. You also, my understanding is that the United States is also, yes, it has some interest in alienating Russia, but I'm not sure if that's a strategic interest. And, there are other reasons why Azerbaijan and Turkey are important for the US. So that leads me to the next developing power structure in the region, which is the 3+3 format. Is it possible that this will be some kind of a regional format that can compel Azerbaijan to negotiate with Armenia? Because we know that a lot depends on this. We know that militarily Armenia will not be able to match Azerbaijan anytime soon. So it really seems to be like diplomacy and leverage by regional outside actors. So, we know that Russia, for instance, consider a scenario where the active war in Ukraine ends. And would it be possible that Russia may also have ability to twist Aliyev's arms? And also, we know that the reason that we have a Sunni today is mostly because Iran. At least I believe you have expressed that opinion on our show in the past. This week, Iran's ambassador to Armenia said that the next meeting of the 3+3 format will be in Turkey soon. So, yeah, the question is, could as much trepidation that Armenians have against anything that involves Turkey, is it possible that this format may be the venue where Azerbaijan may be forced to give a little bit more in order to at least not have an active war breakout and to deter Azerbaijan from aggression?
First of all, on Armenia being against Turkey, I'm not sure, especially for this government.
I said, because, and that's why I said Armenians in general, perhaps us.
Because,
but yes,
the
government...
Prime Minister visited inauguration of President Erdogan in June 2023. Like, they called each other at least once per year, congratulated for Vartavar or whatever. So if Armenia is happy to negotiate with Turkey directly, like to be against this 3+3 or 3+2 format, I'm not sure. As I mentioned, here, probably the election result of Georgia may play a role, because if Georgian Dream still is in power after the elections, then Georgia may come back to this 3+3. And this time it will be real 3+3, because as of now, 2 meetings happened without Georgian participation. Like it was 3+2, at least the de facto. So yes, if Georgian Dream, so again, many ifs, but this is geopolitics. If Georgian Dream remains in power and Georgia comes back to this format, and if again, as a result of Trump victory or whatever else, active phase of war stops in Ukraine and conflict is frozen and Russia comes back, or at least has more resources to put on South Caucasus, then I believe we will see the activization of 3+3. We will see activization, including also some attempts to probably manage the Armenia-Azerbaijan relations there. But again, many ifs as usual.
Okay, moving on. Benjamin, last week, Deputy U.S. Undersecretary of State Azra Zaya was in Armenia and announced that the US will station a permanent advisor in the Armenian Defense Ministry to elevate the US-Armenian relationship to a strategic level. Needless to say, Russia doesn't approve of this, the same as they didn't like the US-Armenian Eagle Partner 2024 exercises in Armenia. Russia has in the past also requested clarification from Armenia as to what all these military and defense accords really mean, and Armenia just responds that they are not aimed at any third countries. What is the significance of this permanent posting, and what does a strategic partnership mean for Armenia and the US, especially in light of Armenia's perhaps titular-only membership in the CSTO and alliance with Russia?
I don't think we can speak about strategic partnership. We should speak about strategic dialogue. Like de jure, Armenia and US launched strategic dialogue in 2019, and we know that there were several meetings within this strategic dialogue between many different American officials from different agencies came to Armenia, Armenians came to United States, but still to speak about strategic partnership, Georgia de jure has strategic partnership with United States based on the strategic partnership charter, which was signed in early January 2009 under the last days of President George W. Bush. But yes, we have a strategic dialogue, and we see that some processes moves on. As I mentioned, my feeling is that from American perspective, this is mostly about like, okay, let's create problems for Russia. Let's poke an eye against Russia, tell it, okay, Armenia was your ally, or still de jure is your ally. Like you have military base there, it's a Eurasian Economic Union member, de jure even still member of CSTO, but we are able to put American permanent representatives there. But from Armenian perspective, okay, what Americans are doing, they want to poke Russia. This is great power rivalry. Today they are poking against Russia. Maybe some years after they will appease Russia to do something jointly against China. But these are like big power games, which Armenia, thankfully or not thankfully, is not part and probably never is going to be part. But from my perspective, the Armenian task is not to make too much hype from this. Again, not to make too much hype, not to play this US game of poking or doing this something against Russia, but try to get as much as possible from US strategic advice, which, because fact is fact, regardless we like US foreign policy, US domestic policy, or whatever, fact is fact is US military is strongest military in the world, at least technologically, but I believe also through the military art system. And this is not my personal opinion. Many military experts believe that yes, despite US is not hegemon, a unipolar moment is over, but still, US military is the strongest military in the world, which means that having opportunity to get some advices or more access how the strongest military operates, this is a good thing for Armenia. But I would advise like to agree to this, but also not to play this American game, not to make too much anti-Russian hype, because definitely this is not for Armenian interest. Again, as a great power rivalry. For example, let's jump 50 years from now. There was a US-China rivalry in 1960s. Then US-China came together to put pressure on Soviet Union. Now Russia and China are together to put pressure on the US. And I don't exclude that if war in Ukraine, at least active phase of war in Ukraine is over, then the US would like to come to understanding with Russia again, this time to have this US, Europe, Russia against China. So great powers, they are too big to fail. They will be always there. But again, not to make too much anti-Russian hype from this, to say, yes, this is excellent because this will allow us to be more anti-Russian. This is not smart. But the fact that you may access, or Armenia may have an access to the strongest military in the world, regardless what we understand under access, like advice, force structure, or whatever, I think this is positive.
Benjamin, on this topic, this advisor business really puzzled me. Is there precedent for this? I know that probably the US has advisors in Ukraine and maybe even Georgia, but outside of Ukraine and Georgia, what is the practice of US stationing advisors inside ministries of foreign governments? And for instance, does Russia have a similar role in the Armenian ministry?
I don't exclude that, at least until Velvet Revolution, there was strong connection between Armenian Ministry of Defense and Russian Ministry of Defense. Not sure about de jure or public statement about stationing an advisor, but de facto I don't exclude it because, again, there were very strong connections between Armenian Ministry of Defense and Russian Ministry of Defense. Regarding examples of officially stationing American advisors, good question. Definitely, there were a lot of advisors in Georgia, at least under Saakashvili. In Ukraine, yes. Now I believe there are some sort of mission, maybe European mission in Moldova, but again, Americans also are active there. So I don't believe this is a first time, but it will be interesting also to look into some areas where there is no geopolitical rivalry, because Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, these all are cases which are related with US desire or efforts to somehow decrease Russian influence in post-Soviet space. It will be interesting to look if there are such cases, for example, in South America, Central America, I don't know, in Southeast Asia, in Africa. I'm not sure, but also I don't think that this is something like too much exceptional, frankly speaking.
Benjamin, do you think that Russia's rejection this past week of Armenian agricultural exports attributed to excessive pesticide content is actually a political warning to Armenia?
Could be. Also, of course, I'm not in a position to argue that every Armenian product are fully in line with Eurasian Economic Union standards, but usually these type of things, like even if there is something not in line with standards, it's up to political decision to use this or not to use it. I think could be some sort of warning, because something happened, I believe, some 6 months ago or 1 year ago, when something happened with Jermuk. But again, as far as I understand, this is not like a wholesale ban. It's about some few Armenian companies. But I don't exclude that this could be some warnings that, okay, something is not making happy Russia. And look, this is only the first step. But let's at least start dialogue. Let's speak. Otherwise, there will be second, third, fourth. Yes, I would agree that probably this could be some political messaging.
Okay, well, let's move to our final topic, which is actually a mid-year review of our 2024 predictions. As our listeners know, for the past couple of years, we've made end-of-year predictions for the upcoming year. You can refer to our show and show notes for episode 300 of December 31, 2023 for our 2024 predictions. So we thought we'd do a quick mid-year review today because there's been so much change in the last 6 months. Benjamin, let's start with your predictions first.
Okay.
Your high probability prediction was some sort of an Armenian-Azerbaijani agreement will be signed, but threats on Armenia will continue. Your medium prediction was the conflict in Ukraine will be frozen, maybe a ceasefire agreement will be signed. And your low probability prediction was that some Armenians may return to Artsakh. So how do you see your predictions coming along after about 6.5 months, given where we are, and how would you adjust them, if anything?
Okay, on Armenia's going back to Artsakh, definitely it's very low probability. Then something may happen in Ukraine. Probably I would keep the same, but on something to be signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan, even as we discussed, it could be statement on principles, etc. Probably now I will say it's not high, but middle probability given all these developments. So my change will be my first assumption, high probability, from high probability to middle probability that something, regardless what it is, may be signed by the end of 2024 between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Okay. Hovik, your high probability was similar to Benjamin's medium probability in that you say some meaningless treaty would be signed, but you also add that enclaves may also be captured. Anyway, let me remind our listeners, high probability for Hovik was some meaningless Armenian-Azerbaijani treaty will be signed. Enclaves may be captured by Azerbaijan. The medium probability was Pashinyan will take more dictatorial steps to cling to power, and the West will turn a blind eye. And the low probability prediction was that the Armenian opposition will figure out how to struggle more effectively. Any thoughts? What's your assessment of your predictions, and how would you adjust them, if anything?
I think that mostly it seems like similar to Benjamin, I see maybe there's less likelihood of a treaty being signed, and I believe, treaty in quotes. I still see some kind of a principles. I think I still see that Azerbaijan may force Armenia to some kind of a principles, but it may be not a high probability, but a medium probability. And I also said that enclaves may be captured by Azerbaijan. I still think that there is a medium level chance that essentially maybe not captured, because Pashinyan gives away everything. So it would be something that, I think that Armenia may start giving away some of the enclaves to Azerbaijan, maybe starting with in the Tavush region. I'm not sure, but it seems at least on principle they have made statements that they agree with this. And on the
also,
yeah.
Sorry, Hovik, but let's fix that. Yes, Azerbaijan got something like it's not enclaves, but Azerbaijan got non-enclave villages. Like if there was like 4 non-enclaves and 4 enclaves, as of now, like half of the year, Azerbaijan got control of these non-enclave villages. So in any case, somehow this was like yes, you mentioned enclaves, but I think our understanding was that it covered both enclaves and non-enclaves, so or some territory. So yes, in 2024, at least we are in mid-July. Yes, now Azerbaijan controls more territory than it controlled on December 31, 2023.
And I agree. And then I guess on the low likelihood, where I said the Armenian opposition will figure out how to struggle more effectively, I think it remains to be seen how the Bagrat-Sirpazan movement will move in September. I think they are not dead completely. So I still have hopes that this will be a turning point, but I think you have, I've already classified it as low probability, and I still don't think it will be, I'll be surprised if they are successful, but obviously I don't rule it out.
Well, your medium probability prediction was a home run, Hovik.
Unfortunately, I mean, none of these are things that we should celebrate, but it seems that we are correct.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Asbed, for your predictions, you had said that a high probability the Armenian real estate market may experience a significant downturn. And for the medium level, you said Trump may get elected to the US president again. And for the low-level probability, you said that Israel-Gaza war may expand to engulf other regional powers.
Yeah, for the real estate market, it's hard to say what the exact picture of the Armenian market is because so much depends on what stats you're looking at and actually also who is reporting them. But if you look at the first half 2024 year-over-year data, price and transaction levels are reportedly healthy. I was looking at those yesterday. But if you look at the month-over-month data, it looks like the real estate market is in a downtrend. So I'm not sure where it's going to end the year. I still think we're looking at maybe a 20-ish% decline in housing prices, although the tax law on mortgages in the Yerevan region seem to be driving the market towards more activity and probably supporting prices to remain a little higher in Yerevan. For the medium prediction that, 6 months ago, I thought that Trump had barely a 50-50 chance to get reelected as US president. Well, since the debate a couple of weeks ago with Biden and then last week's assassination attempt on Trump and finally Biden calling off his campaign for reelection over this past weekend, I think I'm kind of ready to raise my unscientific prediction to 75% Trump. I think he's closer to winning than the Democrats are, who seem to be in a little bit of a disarray. That's just my opinion. And I do want to mention that I'm not endorsing Trump. I wasn't planning to vote either for Biden or Trump. Biden and his administration have failed Armenians deeply and fundamentally, in my opinion. He chose not to do anything to prevent the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. Meanwhile, I know you can't say Trump has failed any promises because he hasn't made any promises, but for him, Armenians essentially do not exist. Trump couldn't give a flying hoot about Armenians. He's friends with the Erdogans, ALiyevs, Kim Jong-un's, Netanyahu's of this world. So he doesn't care about Armenians one bit.
Well, Trump did promise to settle the war in 2020, but obviously that was 2020.
Yeah, and with his selection of J.D. Vance and the latter's comments about Armenians, there's always, this is the thing about U.S. politics. There are all these promises that usually do not come. They don't come true. And my low-level prediction for the Israel-Gaza war possibly expanding regionally, well, there were a couple of serious flare-ups of this conflict when I think Israel bombed some compounds around Damascus and killed an Iranian general, and then Iran sent a whole fleet of drones and missiles towards Israel. But then all sides were signaling that the escalation was a show, just for face-saving reasons. So a bigger war was averted so far. Still, if you ask me, Israel has killed over 38,000 Palestinians, then that's a fucking genocide. And if that's not an expanded war, I don't know what is. I guess you have to ask a Palestinian, has the war really expanded in their opinion? Just imagine if Israel killed a quarter of the population of Artsakh. right?
Well, I agree that it is a genocide, but you did say it would engulf other regional powers, not only
Right.
expand.
It
So,
almost engulfed, like I said, it almost engulfed Iran, but they stayed out of it. So
well, I mean, the
that's,
jury on that is still out, I guess.
yeah,
We talked a little bit about that.
yeah. I
Yeah,
maintain
of
that
course, still there are chances that something may happen with Lebanon against Hezbollah, but
there
not
are.
too much, frankly speaking. There are, but not high. Probably middle or even low.
I
That
agree.
There's
I think I'm going to
some,
keep this at a low level.
Israel-Hezbollah war like in 2006.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to keep this at a low probability for the rest of 2024.
So I don't mean to be arrogant, but can I say that I think in general, our assessments were pretty much, I mean, with minor deviations. I mean, yes, adjusting a high to medium. I think that this was these were pretty good predictions. Unfortunately, a lot of them on the negative side. But hey, at least we didn't predict that the U.S. is going to come and save Armenia. Like some other podcasts do. So.
Yeah, some people were telling that the US will transform Artsakh into Taiwan. I'm not sure how it was not going to happen, but okay, if they understood under Taiwan that no Armenians are living there because there is no Armenians in Taiwan, probably yes.
Maybe they will send 100,000 Taiwanese to Artsakh one day. We'll
There
see.
we go. There we go.
And
When China invades,
TCMC,
sorry.
and also brought TCMC fabs to Stepanakert.
All right.
Yes.
Let's wrap up our topics here. Is there something on your mind from the past week or month that you want to talk about? Benjamin, is there anything you want to share?
Good question. Probably, I would say that my key message will be, or my understanding is, that we should stop hyping anything like, especially now there is, as I mentioned, a lot of hype towards the West, and now people are speaking about Armenia should officially apply to become EU member state or whatever. Then very soon we will have visa-free travel to the EU, etc. Let's be more sober. Let's not get too ignited or too happy or too emotional. Especially, let's look back what happened to us in the last 4 years, and let's be less emotional, and let's do less hype.
Hovik, what's on your mind?
I think that I'll skip this rule that I have of answering every week, Asbed.
Okay. Well, then let's just leave it there for today. Thank you, Benjamin, for joining us. This was a long but interesting show.
Yeah, thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you, Asbed. Thank you, Hovik.
That's our show, recorded on July 22, 2024. We've been talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, a Yerevan-based think tank, and he's also the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. More about Dr. Poghosyan is in our show notes, so please check that out. Please remember to support us. Go to our donate page, podcasts.groong.org/donate, and become a sustaining member of Groong and give monthly. Thank you in advance. I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
And this is Hovik Manucharyan.
Please follow us on social media and follow us everywhere you get your Armenian news. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.